The statements and opinions expressed in this episode are those of Dr. Sigman and his guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views of Veradigm.
It's time to do healthcare smarter. This is Smart Medicine, hosted by Dr. Scott Sigman and powered by Veradigm. We all have ideas. Some are good and some just don't make the cut. But once in a while, someone has an idea that doesn't just change their life, it changes lives. When you get it right in medicine, you're not just chasing business success, you are rewriting the way people live. That's the power of innovation in healthcare. Today, we talk about medical technology innovation, a passion of mine and the passion of our guest, Dr. Josh Makower. He co-founded the biodesign program at Stanford. He teaches the next generation of innovators, and he's the mind behind ExploraMed, an incubator that's launched a dozen companies, including one that will be a case study for us today. The future is determined by those courageous enough to change it. So here's my question. Do you have the courage? Before we dive into the conversation, I want to do a quick industry checkup. Here's the headline. Digital health startups, especially those using AI, are catching serious momentum. In the first half of 2025 alone, venture capital poured $6.4 billion with a B into that space. So the money's there. But what happens next? That's a different beast entirely, with 75% of early-stage medtech startups never making it to commercialization. The funding dries up, regulatory hurdles drag, payers push back. You're left trying to convince people with spreadsheets that your life-changing device is worth the risk. So if innovation is in your bones, then you're in the right place. Because today's guest has been through it all and lived to innovate again. So today's guest is Dr. Josh Makower. He's a true pioneer at the intersection of innovation, medicine, and policy. We're thrilled to have him on Smart Medicine. I, for one, am very excited for this episode. I've always had a passion for medical device design and early adoption of technology. Welcome to the show, Dr. Makower.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Dr. Sigman. It's a pleasure and honor to be here.
Welcome to Smart Medicine. We always like to start at the beginning. You're obviously an innovator, and we'll get through your bio here, but it must have started early on. Obviously, you made it to MIT. I'll tell you a personal story. My father is an MIT graduate and went and got his undergrad and his master's in chemical engineering. This was in the late 50s. And he always told the story. I'm like, Dad, how did you get into MIT? And he's like, well, to be honest, there were no SATs. I guess I was the smartest kid in the school, and my principal called the admissions guy, and they got me in. So it's a little different nowadays. But tell us about how you got inspired.
I have always been fascinated with doing stuff that's interesting and different. I think my inspiration as a kid, I was very young, was the Bionic Man. And for me, that show was like, oh my God. With real technology that we can really build, we can make superheroes. And when you're a kid, you're into superheroes and like what can be possible. Do you remember that show?
Lee Majors, the $6 million man. Are you kidding me? Of course. That was awesome.
Exactly. And they say, we can rebuild him. And then they show all the technology, the bionic eye and everything. And I was just fascinated. So I've got notebooks, literally. I saved one from when I was a little kid, like I was a single digit kid. And I've got my own inventions of using technology. That's where the fascination began. It was that actual TV show that made me want to do that for my life.
I think that's so amazing because back then, obviously, the technology really didn't exist. But it's amazing what we have now, right? It seems like the world has accelerated at such an exponential pace from when you and I were growing up and before there was internet and there were dial phones and newspapers and all those things that we sort of take for granted today. So through your design of the $6 million man, and you become a mechanical engineer, which is amazing. So obviously that passion accelerated in. You then go and get an MD from NYU, an MBA from Columbia. So I'm curious, and I studied your background intensely. Was going to medical school a strategic decision to gain sort of credibility in medical device design? Or initially, did you have desire of potentially practicing medicine?
So great question. Also, I just didn't have any role models who were innovators. I didn't know anybody like that. And I didn't have anyone to guide me. And so I loved engineering. I loved learning how to describe physical systems with equations and design them and think about how to do that. And I just dreamed like, okay, now I want to learn how to do it for the body. And for me, like no better way to learn about the body and the way it works than going to medical school. When I got to medical school, I realized, wait, they're training me how to be a practicing physician, which of course, like, duh. But
well, that's why most of us go to medical school, Josh. I'm just saying.
I know. I figured that out once I was there, but it was I did accomplish my goal of really getting a really great grounding in all disease, all physiology, anatomy, and everything. It just was wonderful. So mission was accomplished there, and then I pivoted as I started to approach the end of my training towards not necessarily continuing as a practicing physician, but to try to carve some path where I could use that medical and engineering degree to build things for patients more in a setting that's more outside of the traditional medical pathway.
Yeah, we'll get to your incredible spread across all subspecialties of medicine in your medical device design. So it seems like you went to Pfizer after no residency, no fellowship. You went to Pfizer, went to work, and then it was time for an MBA. And it seems like that was a natural transition for you at this point. A lot of kids go to get their MBA because they want a few more initials at the end of their name and they think it may pay dividends down the road, but they don't really have a passion. So I'd like to know, for our listeners in particular, when you went to get your MBA, was it to understand the business side of commercialization for an existing idea? You're like, I think I can do this. Or was it, let me get a broader vision of how business is going to apply to innovation in this space?
Right. The truth of that answer is I got the job because I actually wrote a letter to the president of Pfizer. And then he sent my CV to the head of strategic planning. And then they were like, you're an interesting guy. Let me call up the head of the device division and the pharma division. You can decide which one you want. So where would you like to go? I was like, I want devices. I'm an engineer. So like, okay, you're in the device division. My job was like, talk to the doctors, understand this technology of a divestiture or an acquisition, or look at our tech. It was med and engineering all the time. And then when it got to the business discussion, okay, now we're going to cut a deal. Thanks, Josh. You did your thing. Yeah, you leave the room. You don't need to be here with the rest of us because we're going to talk about like net present value. You don't know about business. And so I was like, okay, I don't like that. I need to be in the room where it's happening. So that's why I went to business school, was to basically build those chops to be able to be like, no, I have a business degree. I can come for this discussion too. And that was sort of the motivation. I was realized like I was seriously missing an understanding that was necessary for me to actually be taken seriously, and also to understand the concepts and parameters in which they were making these business decisions were so financially oriented. I didn't have the tool set.
It's interesting. So that's a great segue to ExploraMed. So you had to create this space for yourself. You're a mechanical engineer from MIT. Now you've got a medical degree too. And now where are we going to put you? So that's where you sort of jumped into ExploraMed so early on in your career to then take all these building blocks that you had built and now take a leap of faith in your career and now put them all together. So tell us about the origin story of ExploraMed.
Yeah. So in there, we use the beginning of BioDesign as well, because Hank, who hired me, Hank McKinnell, called me back in his office and said, help me solve a problem. Help me understand why we buy these small companies. They are so innovative before they get here. And then once we acquire them, they stop innovating as explosively and effectively. What's going on? And that conversation changed my life because it gave me license to go interview all the founders of the half a dozen or so the companies in the portfolio. And so I interviewed those founders, understood how they came up with their ideas, where they came from, what that was all about, and their process to ultimately creating a product, and then interviewed currently employed people, which were really different people running the businesses, and how they did it. And what I realized was when they're innovators on their own, they're innovating from scratch. They've got a problem they want to solve, and they go find the technology that makes the most sense to solve it. When they're inside the company, they've made a huge investment in the formation of metal implants and surfaces and all this kind of stuff. And they've invested so heavily. They just want to exploit and get economies of scale on the existing investment. And so they're looking for incremental stuff. What's the next thing we can do with all this stuff that we do, which is like, where could we put another implant? Where can we put another surface? Not how do we solve a fundamental medical problem that's been unsolved, and maybe invent a technology that we don't have any capacity or capability in. That was outside of scope. And so I brought that back to Hank and I said, this is what's going on. Everyone's incremental here because they even define themselves like functionally in R&D by the technology that they are involved with. I came back and said, what we need is an open-ended thing where we focus on needs first and really pull out the biases of existing solutions and then open ourselves up with a set of criteria of what is the need and the patient and the disease really require first in a purified way, and then invent and innovate on that. And so he said, sounds great. Prove that can be done here inside of Pfizer. And we did. It was very successful, except the most innovative stuff, the stuff that really was like mind-blowingly awesome, they didn't want to do because it was too risky. And so that's when I was like, okay, I'm not satisfied with this. I feel like I need to be an entrepreneur and do this on my own. That was the birth of ExploraMed. I want to take this process that I know works and do it as an individual innovator outside of a big company where I don't have to sell it to a board of people that don't understand innovation. And that's why I created ExploraMed.
Yeah, so the suits took over, which always happens, right? Especially if these larger companies, they have investors and shareholders and they have responsibilities for profits, et cetera. And they're incredibly good at incremental innovation. But revolutionary innovation really takes courage and it takes a different space. So from ExploraMed, you get invited to the faculty at Stanford, right? At the School of Medicine. You're back to the School of Medicine again, even though you've never practiced. Innovation is, for me, it feels so idiosyncratic. You've got to have somebody that comes up with such an amazing idea. There's all this skepticism. Nobody wants to do it because it's never been done before. I mean, so how do you teach innovation, right? And who are your students? Who's there listening?
Questions obviously reveal that you have a deep understanding of this. But many, many people believe that it is idiosyncratic, that it is phenomenological. It just sort of happens. It's this magical, innovation is this magical thing. And I have done everything in my power over my career to not only develop ways for anyone to be an innovator, but to also prove that it's possible. You can teach innovation, you can practice it, you can get good at it. It's like any other skill set. You can learn it. This is reliable and repeatable, and it must start with the patient. It must start with that problem. It must start with the thing that is the problem. Like I know we all have, there are still opportunity for improvement of everything. And some things, there's huge opportunity for improvement. And some things that have yet to be even touched and solved. And people have looked at it for years, but they haven't unpacked it. And usually we are so biased on solutions that exist. As we know, it's the same thing for physicians. When there's a problem, they know how to describe it based on the tools that they have. But that's all that they have, right? But we can help people forget those biases of the things that they have and know and open their minds to what is the problem? What is the objective that needs to be met? What's the outcome that needs to be met? And when we do that and separate it from solutions, that creates a space for inventing that actually is the easy part. The invention part is actually the easy part once you do the need part right. And so it's a little bit of a discipline in that way.
I've spent my entire career having rotten tomatoes thrown at me, right? As each new innovative idea, and doctors are the worst. I mean, you spent years of your life learning things. The last thing they want to do is have to learn new ways of doing things because it's just it's ingrained into our training. And I was going to ask you what your why is, but I think you answered it for us and our listeners. And your why is the patient, right? You've had incredible range of innovation in specialties: cardiology, ENT, urology, orthopedics, women's health. And so it's always been focused about the patient and then coming up. All right, doc, listeners and I are in your classroom right now at Stanford, okay?
Right.
And we're here to learn about innovation.
Right.
So give us some of the fundamental principles that every inspiring innovator needs to understand. And just as important, what are some of the biggest myths about innovation, the principles that we need to know about, and some of the stuff that we should be aware of?
All right. I'll try to very briefly summarize this. First of all, like you said, it's all about the patient. And that's where it needs to start. So it really has to be a deep understanding of that patient, that disease state, and what is going wrong. Okay. That's where the inspiration has to come. And to be able to describe that need in a pure way without an embedded solution, as I mentioned, which is actually hard. Cause like, if someone's having let's say a unique catheter in for a long time, gets infected, someone's going to say, well, we need the urinary catheter that, that has an anti-infective coating. Like that's a solution. That's actually a solution. That's not a need. The need is the problem that the origin. See, the difference is like, is a catheter, no, the catheter is the problem. The catheter is the solution. Like we need to go back to the thing that is actually, we need to get urine out of patients without causing infections who are bedbound. Like that's actually the need, right? No catheter, no infection code. So part of it is mindset. So much of this is mindset. So that's number one. And once you open up your mind to that, then the other thing to do as an innovator is build your palette. Build your palette of science understanding, because that's how you're going to invent with. It's like you're an artist, you have a bunch of colors on your palette. What are the colors that you're painting with, that you're inventing with, right? If you only understand medical devices or only understand this, you're probably only going to invent in those spaces, right? So if you can be a consumer of knowing at least enough of each of these different technologies, it opens up your breath to imagine how you might use them to solve problems that you find. So that's another inventor tool. There are lots of these. But most important to get all the way through is you have to have perseverance. And if you do the need right, and you believe in that patient problem, and you're passionate about it, and you've done that first piece right, there's a big unsolved need that these people need. And to know you just need to get it through the regulatory process, the clinical process, the reimbursement process, the adoption process. Those are all so difficult. But somewhere out there, there are these patients that are suffering and that need this. It keeps you going through all of that. So perseverance is like a fundamental requirement.
It's great. I mean, in my experience, whenever I've been involved in a new project, the more people say it's a bad idea, then I know it's a great idea. If everybody's agreeing early on, then it's incremental, right? But if everybody's against it, it can be revolutionary. Let's go to a shared story. I thought we would do a little case study here where we're going to apply some of these innovative learning tools that you provide at Stanford. And that's with MoxyMed, which is a company that has made this really cool new implant. Not so new. It's taken a while to get here, but it's called the Misha implant. And I've used it. And talk about cross-pollination, right? Like, let's take the shock absorber out of your car and then put it around your knee joint and be able to create a solution for the pain that patients are experiencing. I've used it and it worked. So let's talk about the clinical need, the why, right, for this product in particular, and what was the problem that you were trying to solve?
Yeah. So there's a pattern for things that are like perfect opportunities for us. We've really done a great job in a lot of different specialties here. There's a big problem. When it's super severe, you have a big time surgery that's effective. But leading up to that, a lot of relatively ineffective therapies and drugs, sort of like only so much. And then there's the other stuff. And then you leap to the surgery. And usually that means there's this group of patients in between that have a big severe need. They're suffering. They're not being well cared for. And the doctors are like, we don't want to do the big surgery on you. We don't want to replace your knee. Because you have this early stage thing, let's wait and see how it evolves. Maybe lose some weight, do this, do that.
Where you're going to stay in pain, but you're still going to have pain.
yeah. Wear a brace, do these other things. So, because I don't want to do this early surgery on you. That is classic. And there's a lot of places in medicine for it. And osteoarthritis is a good example of it. And so that is how we found our way to that need, is that we realized that there's an underserved patient. There's things that people do, but the results of those other things, they just don't really work that well. And the real thing that works is definitive knee replacement. But for all the reasons, you don't want to be replacing knees necessarily in 20 or 30 or 40-year-olds. That's too early, right? So you do it when you need to, but you try not to. And so what we wanted to do is create something that addressed that population in a more definitive and positive and powerful way, that also didn't have some of the shortcomings, which are short-term results and all this kind of stuff, some of the other approaches like that are generally deployed.
So trying to come up with a solution that's almost a bridge solution to truly keep people moving. I like to say, as a human species, we have to keep moving. If we stop moving, we die. And knee osteoarthritis is actually epidemic. I mean, 18 million people in the US, and it's just crazy numbers. I mean, I have to say, my first patient was just the worst patient on the planet. Workers' comp, multiple previous surgeries. And I'm like, all right, that's the one I'm going to do, guys. I just want to let you know. And she walked in 2 weeks after surgery with a smile on her face without having pain for the first time in over a decade. So I was like, wow, I'm all in. All right, let's talk about the F word in medical device development. Financing, right? You can only call your mother so many times and to be able to get money to try and get this thing up and going. And I know there's been a lot of money spent on MoxyMed, maybe upwards as much as $200 million to get to the point where you're now commercialized and you're out there. Give us a brief description about the evolution of your financing for this project in particular.
Oh boy, you're right. It is an F word. It's very, very hard. And I think as an innovator, raising money is probably one of the most challenging things. When we started and we ran this idea by FDA experts, they told us it was a pretty straightforward 510K. After we got it through our first patient studies and knew that it was working, and put together our application for, an IDE to do a study with a 510K as a target, that's when the FDA had totally changed. It was in the 2008, 9, 10 timeframe, and it was like a different world.
And it's easy to raise money then. There was only like a major financial crisis at that point in 2008. So that's was a wrench in the equation.
Exactly. And I do want to give credit, great investors and great supportive people who see through the problems, see what the opportunity is, and just sort of say, I know what we bet on initially. I know what we wrote our check on initially, but man, things have changed, but we're going to be there. And I would say those investors were Hank Plain at Morgan Thaler and John Nera at NEA. And those guys, they hung in. We had a big pivot. We had oh my God, it's a PMA. What? And then what was going to be a small trial was now going to be not only a long trial, but it was going to be 2-year long trial of follow-up, right? And it takes at least 1.5 years or 2 to just recruit these patients. So we're talking 4 years of clinical investment. And then along the way, by the way, when you're doing something completely new, you learn stuff. And we learned first about a procedural thing that we wished we did differently. It cost us having to restart and redesign the product. Redesigning takes 18 to 24 months. Putting the next one in, that one really did well and solved all the infection issues. But we realized when patients had no pain, they would just, literally go back to the most extreme sports we ever saw. And then we had to do another redesign. And through all of these sequences, we had our supportive investors. And they were like, okay, we get it. But they knew that at the outcome, it was going to be a big thing. And I still believe that today. But all of these iterations were always in realization that at the end of the day, it's all about the patient. We got to deliver something that delivers that goal. And if we can see now that there's a tweak that we need to make, we need to go fix it right now. And so we did that 4 times at MoxyMed.
Oh my God.
4 times.
So for our listeners, a 510K is basically you're taking somebody else's idea that's already been FDA approved and you're making a widget change on it. And it's a much required approval process. And that's the majority of medical device design, especially in the orthopedic world. the PMA, which is a pre-market approval, which you need to go, you're going to starting from scratch. You're going to get FDA approval for this thing. And it's a long, arduous journey. And through that process, you've learned a lot through there. So I really appreciate you sharing that story. What we just heard was nothing short of a masterclass. So let's recap a few big takeaways. Number 1, start with patient need. That should be your why. Try for revolutionary innovation, not just incremental innovation. Second, build the right team. Innovation doesn't happen in isolation. Surround yourself with experts who see the vision and are willing to chase it with you. Third, get comfortable with risk. The best ideas usually don't come cheap. Look at MoxyMed. That journey came with a $200 million price tag. And finally, iterate relentlessly. Don't cut corners. If something's not right, don't force it, tear it down, and rebuild it. So now we've learned how to get an idea to the starting line. What happens when it's time to actually launch? That's exactly where we're headed next. This episode of Smart Medicine is powered by Veradigm. If you're working to bring smarter, patient-first solutions to life, Veradigm helps you work smarter. Connect with the team at Veradigm to see how they're powering the future of healthcare. Let's talk about sort of a deeper dive on the path to commercial success. So let's say I call you, I say, Josh, it's the Fro. I've got this great new idea, right? And I know it's going to change the world and it's going to transform care, but I need your advice. And I want you to walk me through 2 pathways. I want to hire lawyers. I'm going to get my own patents and I'm going to keep this inside the bubble. And then when I'm ready, when I'm ready to go commercialized, I'm going to go to the big players and get a big value. Or, all right, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I got a busy practice. I don't have a lot of time for all of that. I want to call up Johnson & Johnson and I want to partner with them and I want to do a dual patent with them. Let them pick up the heavy lifting and then I'll get some royalties out of the deal. So give us a little bit of differentiation on those 2 pathways.
Yeah, because I get this a lot because we do have a lot of MDs that go through our programs. Both are fine. It's really about you and what you want to do with your career. If you enjoy practicing medicine and that's really what you want to do all the time, then you can absolutely find a licensing opportunity early and see if people pick it up. The one problem with that method, though, is always to make change. As you pointed out, everybody thinks it's a bad idea. It's not going to work and stuff like that. So you need a champion, right? In a lot of cases, you are the best champion of your own idea. And so if you are lucky enough to inspire a champion inside of another big organization and they like, I love this thing. I'm going to drive it. I'm going to own this. I'm going to make this my career. You have found gold because it's actually about the person that drives it that makes the difference. And so if you found that partner, that's actually the piece that matters. Big company can do this, but big companies don't do things without people that want to put their neck out, try things, and we're willing to fail. That's why a lot of people choose the first one that you mentioned, which is I'm driving this thing. I'm not relying on the naysayers and stuff like this. I'm going to make this happen. So I will say that's my story, right? I left Pfizer to drive change myself, right? And a lot of the things we do, we do take big time risks and go outside the paradigm. And I know that the only way to do that is with us driving it, because until we finally get people to adopt and believe in it, we got to overcome all those barriers. So the champion matters the most. And so the question in the licensing is find that champion inside of a big company. And then if your ultimate goal is helping patients, which is my goal, I just want to if there's a champion there, great, you do it. But I generally don't find those are very hard to find. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately speaking, the idea is to get to the start line and be able to get this idea in to be able to heal patients, regardless of what pathway. I mean, I've experienced both ways. I worked with a large medical device company. I have the pride of having 3 patents sitting on my wall. none of which were commercialized. Okay. But it was a lot of fun working with these people. Now, let's talk about another one of the big words when it comes to commercialization and innovation and startups. And that's the D word, dilution,
Yes.
right? How do you get your idea to the start line and be able to hold on to your equity so you get a return on your investment? But yet, what do they say? You have to dilute to be able to have success. You got to thread the needle. Is there anything give me some advice for our listeners on that.
I mean, I often say dilution happens. It just happens. You can't. Dilution is really like sharing risk reward with people, right? That's what it's about. If you could pay for the thing yourself, you don't have to be diluted, right? But you're taking a heck of a risk, right? So that's the trade-off. Look, do I fight for my equity? Do I work hard to try to get the best price for my companies and my shareholders? Absolutely, I do. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure we raise enough money to get there, to get this thing done and to be successful, because you could own 100% on nothing and be never diluted and it goes nowhere, right? And I will tell you, some circumstances where I've still owned a couple of percent of a company that's done very, very, very well, and I'm very happy with that. But I've also been in situations where literally upon success, I literally own nothing. But I don't feel bad about that, because if the patients are benefiting from it, I'm happy. That was the primary goal. I just want to make positive change. If I can benefit personally, financially from it as well, and I have, just making a living doing this kind of thing, it's great. So I do think it's worth trying to protect your equity, but at the end of the day, it is way down the stack in terms of what's important. And if you really want to make changes as an innovator, you just sort of have to accept it. It's there, own as much as you can, but you got to make the trade-offs. And at the end of the day, if you've invented something and you're in a single digit of something, you are owning a lot. That's a great outcome.
Yeah, I think for a baseball analogy, not everybody is going to hit home runs, right? Not everybody can create Apple or Facebook or Meta, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you can hit singles and take your idea to make humanity a better place and, been fairly compensated for your time and energy, I think that's a great thing. So really, really, really well said. Let's go to the future, right? Because there's a lot of cool stuff happening right now. And are you still out in Silicon Valley and Mountain View at this time?
I'm sitting in Stanford University right now.
All right. So yeah, of course you are. I forgot about the Stanford part. But so it's everywhere right now. And we are on an exponential curve for the amazing things, right? It's all about artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And the crazy stuff that we're seeing, whether it's new diagnostics or drug development, right? So first question, it's going to be a couple part question, but how do you see that AI is going to impact to potentially shorten the cycle of medical device development? And are you bullish when it comes to this AI technology for humanity and medical advancement?
I actually am bullish about it. It is a powerful tool and it has risks. However, I'm wildly bullish about it. I use AI every day. I can't believe how much I use it. And I keep on finding new applications for it. And I'm working, the company that we've got in the incubator right now is actually AI imaging robotics guided. It's sort of cool. It's a cool new tool that you create with. And it's just going to be everywhere. But I often say to people are there going to be these AI companies? It's going to be a little bit like word processing in the sense that there may have been a day when it was like, hey, we should back that company because they have word processing. No, I mean, it's going to be everywhere. I think if we stay in touch with it and we stay on top of it, we reskill people to how to use the tool, and then it elevates all of us. So we build upon that technology. So yeah, there's definitely sectors of our economy that are going to be negatively impacted, and we just need to see that coming. It's unstoppable. It's coming. We can't stop it. But I think those that learn how to use the tool that's where to go. And so we need to train people on how to use these tools and not be afraid of them.
I mean, I think one day I'm probably going to be out of a job. I mean, a robot just operated on a dead pig and took out a gallbladder. And so humanoid robots in the operating room. So can you give us some ideas about what you're seeing about AI in medical innovation, medical device innovation for right now for our listeners?
Yeah, sure. It is integrated into every single aspect and will even continue to be of medical device and medical innovation in general. From positing, so here's what AI is super good at. It's taking a complex set of information and correlating it together based on a vast amount of evidence and understanding and boiling it down. But I think the differentiator, though, is for the things that are the unknown and the things that are on the edge of knowledge. That is where AI does not do a good job, because AI is fundamentally based on algorithms that are learning off of historical data. So that's why I think like AI is going to be able to master history, but it isn't necessarily going to create the future. So there's still a role for people like you and me, Scott, to think about that future and imagine and how to use these tools to invent the future. But it's not going to do it on its own. That's the role for us. So it's really going to propel us to be more innovative and create jobs that are about advancing the future. And I think it's going to be super good at everything that is known.
Yeah, we'll see if we get to super intelligence, but it's amazing how fast it's coming down the pipeline. So look, you've been involved in so many different device companies, and where do you want to invest in the future for medical device that's sort of happening now? Where do you see the hot spot?
Lots of opportunity in neuro. It's the big unsolved black box on our heads. And then all the places where you have, cardiovascular orthopedics remain the highest opportunities because they're so prevalent and we still have so many opportunities to improve care there. So that I think so neuro, cardiovascular, orthopedics, I think are going to represent massive opportunities in the future. And of course, behind that, probably cancer, which still is very problematic and have lots of opportunities for improvement there as well.
We've had a previous guest on who is so bullish on AI and cancer treatment that he wants to eliminate the word cancer from our vocabulary, which who knows, right? Could be amazing. We all grew up on the Jetsons and Star Trek, and these things seemed so outrageously in the future, but yet here we are, and we're like going to be doing Jetsons and Star Trek stuff, right? So take us 10 years into the future, right? On your horizon, similar thoughts and ideas.
Yeah.
What innovative technology is going to help us reshape the practice of medicine that you see?
I do think we're going to see robotics become more automated. Probably less and less physician guided, but still physicians involved. But I think robotics and surgery is definitely going to evolve. I think that we are, along with the idea you mentioned, humanoid robots. I do think that there's going to be more of that, and it's going to expand outside of the OR. I think that humanoid-like robots are going to be exceptionally helpful for these tasks that are ridiculously expensive today, where we have caregivers for older people and things like that. And people that I think we're going to finally figure out a way to reduce the burden of expense associated with care delivery and also expand access with tools like AI and stuff like that. I really think that's coming. And in short, what I would say is the future of healthcare, I think, is the first place you go to is your phone. And that phone is going to diagnose and do so much for you. You may not, most of the time, ever need to talk to a human, ever, for your healthcare. It'll prescribe. It'll do all those things. I know this is like heretical, but that's coming. 10 years might be too soon, but that's coming. The next level is you talk to a doctor. You could do that today, telemedicine, right? The next one is if you really want to see somebody, you can go into an office, and that's where you get the physical exam and stuff like that. But we're going to figure out a way to do so much of that information gathering remotely and in the home that I think it's going to improve the lives of physicians, actually, because all the rote stuff can get out of your office, and you're going to see the cases and the people who really actually need you. And that's a better experience for the patient. It's a better experience for you as a doctor. And that's how I think how we're going to evolve.
Oh, I love that. What a great way to finish. Look, Josh, this has been fantastic. I want to thank you for sharing your incredible foresight, passion for innovation, dedication to teaching the next generation of innovators. Your impact across so many areas of medicine is nothing short of inspiring. We're grateful for your leadership in shaping the future of healthcare.
Thank you for your leadership and highlighting innovation and innovators. And I hope we get a chance to meet in person sometime soon. Thank you so much.
I absolutely loved this conversation. What really stood out to me? There's no single perfect path to innovation. And yes, that might feel a little frustrating if you're looking for a roadmap, but honestly, that's the hard truth. You can carve your own path. Doesn't matter if you bootstrap solo or you team up with the giants. What matters is that you take the first step. You have to have the courage to look failure in the eye so that you can succeed. Medical innovation at the end of the day is about improving our patients' lives. And to me, that's smart medicine. I'm Dr. Scott Sigman, and this is Smart Medicine. If you like this episode, make sure to follow us on Apple or Spotify and send it to someone you know with a big idea and the guts to bring it to life. See you next time.